Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So, I know it's springtime right now and you're getting everything planted in your garden, you got it all looking good, but don't forget about your compost. You're going to want some compost to side dress your plants with and do whatever you need compost for, like putting it on your flowers and putting it in your tree or on your trees and in and amongst your garden to fertilize everything. But you're not going to have compost if you don't remember to turn it every so often. So when I go to turning my compost, there's two different ways we can do it. Alright, with my bays. Now I have 3 bays here. Alright, and each one is kind of in a different stage of decomposition. So this bay behind me, it's been here for a couple of weeks. It's been stirred up once and it's time to stir it up again. So when you do that, there's one or two ways you can do it. One, which is my favorite, is to move it from one bay into the next bay. The other one is to take it out of the bay, bring it out here, and mix it back in. Now the only thing I will tell you is the stuff in the pile, down deep in the pile, will decompose faster than the stuff on the top of the pile. So when you're doing that, if you're going to do the single bay thing where you pull it out and put it back in, you want to try and take the top stuff and put it off in one pile off to the side, like over there, and then bring the inside stuff and bring it back further or in a different spot, so that way you get the top stuff on the bottom and the bottom stuff on the top. Alright, it's a little more difficult than doing it when you have a second bay. Now with the second bay, all I do is just kind of pick and choose what I toss into the pile next. Alright, so like right here, you can see I've already got a bunch of green stuff layered on top of some of the brown stuff, or the top basically, because I've been pulling weeds and all my weeds have been going on top of the pile. So the top stuff goes in for a while, then the middle stuff, and then the top stuff. I have pulled some of that aside so that I know what kind of pile is which. Alright, so you just take the bottom stuff, toss it in layers, and then when I toss it, I shake it up, or I kind of make sure when it lands it's loose. Alright, so I'll get a good layer of that. See, like if you get a big chunk, just shake it, try and break it up a little bit. Now it doesn't have to be all completely loose, but what you don't want is a compost that smells like manure, alright, because that's rot and not growth. You want good bacterial growth in here that will break down the compost, and you don't just want rot, because the rot will actually give you anaerobic bacteria, which is still fine, but it's better if you have the aerobic compost. Alright, so once again I'm going to take a layer, just keep tossing it in there. Alright. So then once I've got that done, if you got kitchen waste, I try and keep it somewhere in the middle of the pile, or paper products and such. My coffee grounds, the coffee filters, lemon peels, bones, whatever. And then I'll throw, now that counts as a green, so I'll throw another layer of the brown on. Now, normally, I would also water in between, but this is nice and wet. We just got about 3 inches of rain last night, which is part of why I'm doing it now. So we still got a nice moist pile, and too much water can be as bad as not enough water. So you don't want it too wet, you just want a little bit of moisture in there, so that the bacteria have air and moisture to use for growth. Alright, and then one of the things I did, I scraped up the last little bit of compost I have. This is a little bit of the compost I had left, and that will be the last thing that goes on top. Alright, so I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to use my thermometer to check and see what the temperature is right now, and then we'll come back again tomorrow and check and see if the temperature has gone up substantially. So let me take this over here, stick it in the middle of the pile, and let it sit for a minute or two. So you can see that while the temperature outside was about 78, it's only about 80 degrees right now. So only about 2 degrees hotter than it is with the outside air temp. Alright, so a couple things. One, you can see what the pile looks like there. Two, we'll check again tomorrow to see what the temperature has done, see whether or not it has gone up, which I can guarantee you it will have gone up at least somewhat tomorrow. Thirdly, I wanted to talk to you about ants. Now, I know a lot of people complain about ants in their compost piles, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's anything you can do to keep ants out of your compost piles, at least not here in Florida. I will tell you though that once you stir it up real good, mix it all in like I've done right here, it seems to annoy them to the point where they'll go somewhere else, alright, because you're really mixing up the whole batch, you know, knocking them eggs around and hopefully killing off the queen. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. But the bottom line is, if I keep doing this on a weekly basis, they'll eventually just move on to somewhere where they're not getting stirred up once a week. Alright, so again, we'll check it again tomorrow, and we'll see what the temperature is and how it looks, and finish the video at that point. So I was supposed to have gotten back to checking this compost pile here the day after I did that last part of the video, but I never got around to it. So now here we are, it's 3 days later. Alright, but I want to kind of show you what's going on and how well it's breaking down. So if you look here, you can see my temperature is right at about 78 degrees plus or minus a few. Alright, so we're going to stick this in the middle of the compost pile and kind of check and see what the temperature is. Now, you don't need a thermometer. I've made compost just fine for a very long time without a thermometer. You can just dig your hand in and feel if it's hot. Your average hot water from a house is around 130 to 140 degrees, plus or minus a few. And if it feels as hot as the water that comes out of your tap, you know you've got a good solid growth going on in the bacteria inside of the compost. Alright, so let's take a look at this and kind of see where we're at. So as you can see, that thermometer has gone up over 130 degrees, probably about 132 degrees plus or minus a few, which is pretty decent. So what should your target temperature be? I've heard everything from 120 to 165 degrees. A lot of people say you need to get it to 165 degrees to kill the seeds and to kill the bacteria, which seems kind of silly because I'm trying to grow bacteria. I'm trying to grow life, microbes and such, and getting it too hot seems to me, with my limited understanding and knowledge, that it would kill off some of the bacteria if it got too hot, even though that heat is created by the bacteria. But nonetheless, what you're looking for is signs of bacterial growth, and that's what the heat is as that is breaking down and composting, that process creates heat inside of your pile. So as long as you have a substantial amount of heat, you've got a substantial amount of bacterial growth, in my opinion. Alright, now I'm not the scientist and I'm not trying to be scientific about this necessarily, but what compost actually is nature in a speeded up action. So what we're trying to do is, what happens in nature, stuff falls on the forest floor, that stuff starts to rot down, eventually the bacteria and the bugs and the ants and all the different things out there break this down, then you get other animals walking on it, you know, and rooting through it, and so on, and you know, trying to find bugs and what have you up inside that the forest litter, I guess is what I would call it. And that creates that breakdown scenario where everything starts to break down, and that eventually works its way down into the soil, and that's what creates that nice, loose, loamy, nutrient-rich soil that you find on a forest floor. What we're doing in a compost pile is stacking it taller so that that composting or that breakdown action happens faster. All right, we could do the same thing, just go grab a bunch of leaves and just stack them up and let them rot down over 15-20 years, and you'd probably have some really nice soil after that amount of time, but we ain't got that kind of time. So what we're trying to do is speed the process up and create an environment that is good for the bacteria and microbes and such to actually chew this up, and they will pee and poop, and they will die, and their dead bodies will decay, and that's what creates that composting action. All right, that in turn we put into our garden, and that puts all that nutrients down into the soil. So that's what we're trying to get done here. The temperature, so how do I want to say this? The temperature is not the goal, it's an indication of the process working, in my opinion. Well, almost got dive bombed by a cardinal. So that's just an indication. That is not the thing that we're looking for, in my opinion. I just want to make sure that it's actually cooking, it's actually starting to break down, and then here in a couple more days I will take it, I will move it once again into the other side. You can also use the temperature as a guide to when things start to slow down. So once that temperature starts to go down a bit from the 130-degree range, and again, this is a judgment call, when it starts to cool off a little bit, that's when you know the process has started to slow down. So that's a good point to go ahead and take it, toss it into the other pile, or toss it into a different pile, or mix it in real good, so that those nutrients once again have a chance to continue to break down, the bacteria continue to be able to break down the nutrients in the compost and turn it into good, rich soil that I can put in my garden and use for fertilizer. All right, so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get my compost going. I don't know if you noticed, but this pile was a good foot taller when I started, and that's already starting to sink down, and that's another good indication that your compost is working. As that starts to break down, it'll start to shrink down a bit, and you'll see that the pile has gotten shorter. All right, so that's what I got going on, trying to make some compost so I can keep my garden fertile without having to go out and buy some ultra expensive fertilizer and use chemicals in my garden that I don't want to use. This is all just natural material that is being broken down so that I can grow vegetables. All right, thanks once again for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe. Share it with your friends. Think serious about making some compost, because if you want to make a good, solid, natural garden in your backyard, compost is the answer. It is the answer, in my opinion. All right, thanks once again. Y'all take care. Come back and see me. Make sure you like, subscribe, share it out with your friends. Most importantly, grow something.